So thank you so much for, we're running a little bit late, and thank you for coming out in this pretty terrible weather tonight. For me, it's always an honour to be asked to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we're assembled on today here. An acknowledgement of country is a political act in the recognition of sovereignty of Australia's First Peoples. This evening I would like to acknowledge and show respect to the Gadigal people of the Yorta Nation. The boundaries of the lands of the Gadigal extend from Bondi, along the inner harbour to Glebe, and then southeast to the area that we know today as Botany Bay. The Gadigal were just one among many nations spread across the Greater Sydney Basin, from Newcastle, the Blue Mountains to the Illawarra. When we acknowledge Gadigal land, we also acknowledge the lands of many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations across Australia today. We also acknowledge the cultural connection to country and the rich intellectual properties that were appropriated and transformed into the wealth of the Australian nation. This wealth in turn has built the institutions of government and society that all of us take for granted today. It is to the elders and custodians of all these Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations, past, present and future, that we acknowledge and that we pay our respects to. Every explorer, every settler, every non-Indigenous person who made their mark in Australia's history did so more often than not with the help, guidance and assistance of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. For all of us today, it is an ongoing process to understand the incredible story of Aboriginal people's knowledges and how these knowledges sustain countless generations of people in environments in Sydney like where we're gathered today. The diverse knowledges of Aboriginal people were given and shared, but more often not that they were forcefully taken. This is the list of reasons why we should always pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. So it's also an absolute pleasure to be able to introduce tonight's speaker for the annual Macleay Museum Being Collected lecture series. Tonight's talk is Who Owns the Past? Since its inauguration in 2006 by Dr. Dawn Casey, and now in its 11th year, the Being Collected lecture series has been a platform for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members working within the arts and associated industries to speak from the heart of their personal experiences and would tell us a little bit about what motivates them and about their work in the present state of affairs engaging between museums and communities. Tonight's speaker is Maree Clarke, whose traditional lands extend from the Yorta and Mutti countries that are on the modern borders of what we know today as New South Wales and Victoria, and the BoonWurrung country, which is part of the greater Kulin nation in what we today know as Melbourne. Maree is originally from Mildura in northwest Victoria and began working in her hometown as an Aboriginal educator in 1978. In 1988, the Mildura Aboriginal Cooperative asked her to establish an outlet for her local and national Aboriginal arts and crafts enterprise. This resulted in the Aboriginal art and crafts shop Kiah Krafts, which allowed artists and other members of the community to learn about and sell their works with an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation. In Maree's many years of work as an educator, artist, curator and activist, Maree's practice demonstrates the importance of cultural integrity as an extension of family and kinship obligations, from fostering recognition of the perseverance and strength of Aboriginal knowledge systems to inspiring art movements based on the aesthetics and meaningfulness of women's art practice. Maree has had a deep impact on how Australians today see and understand the works of her forebears and today's generation of Yorta, Mutti and BoonWurrung peoples. Please join us in welcoming Maree.
Thanks for that, Matt, and thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here, and thank you for turning on this nice chilly weather for me. I feel at home, because it's usually quite warm when I come to Sydney. Pardon me. So this evening, I'm basically going to share with you my last 30 years of art practice and how I started and what I do now, which is a lot of research in museum collections, or depending on what exhibition I've been invited to be part of, and just try and think about how I can tell our story through the art and think about new ways of presenting our stories rather than sort of another painting or, you know, simple sculpture or something like that. But yeah, bear with me. And most of my talks I title Bloodline, so it's my connection to my country, culture, place and family. And it's sharing everything with my family. And when I go up home to Mildura, this is one of my little nieces, and we're out on the country collecting kangaroo teeth for a project. and a nephew. So it's also about passing on cultural knowledge and creative art practices. So absolutely everything I do, I involve my family in some respect. But I also do a lot of art mentoring with the Victorian Aboriginal Childcare Agency in Melbourne, and I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years now. And everything that I show the kids, I just tell them to take whatever they like and make it their own and create their own story. So these are some of the other nieces and nephews. My house is like living in a studio. It is a studio. I love it, I eat it, breathe it, live it every single day. It's absolutely fantastic. And when I first moved to Melbourne, I used to sort of make jewellery and supply the boutique shops and collecting local condom seeds, bottle brush, echidna quills. Well, my brother used to get echidna quills to eat. I'm a vegan, I can't eat it, but he would clean them up, give me the quills, and I was able to use them in the necklace. And my brother and I used to cut out different shapes and do these sort of like miniatures on wood. And then I went from that to wanting to set up an exhibition in Melbourne. So my sister-in-law and I approached ATSEC then and contacted all of our artist friends. And we didn't take a fee, but ATSEC had put up all the hanging systems in their building. It was one of the best-selling shows, and some of those artists, names that, you know, that were just starting out and emerging artists, and they're doing really well now. And then I went on to study photography with a woman called Viva Gibb, who'd spent some time in South Africa. And in South Africa there were a lot of black photographers, and she came back to Australia, and I think the only black photographer at the time was Mervyn Bishop. So she organised a project through the Victorian Women's Trust and trained myself and Kim Kruger. And we ended up going to every Aboriginal community in Victoria, you know, taking photographs of different events and family portraits and dead balls and whatnot. And then we had our first exhibition with Lisa Belair, Kim Kruger and Destiny Deacon back in the day, called Pitchamikuri. And then I went on to work as a Koori Arts Officer for the City of Port Phillip, and basically created the first visual arts festival in Victoria, getting a 3-tonne truck, again going to every Aboriginal community, every TAFE college that had an Aboriginal art course, collected mega artworks. We curated 5 exhibitions in Melbourne, and one being at the NGV. And it was the first time NGV started collecting Southeast Aboriginal art. Because us in the Southeast and down South especially, we barely get a look in. Because when people think about Aboriginal art, they tend to think Central Desert, top end, and, you know, we barely exist. So that was absolutely fantastic to do that. And again, another exhibition that was at the NGV, Can't See for Looking, and it's about looking in your own backyard. All the women that were involved in that exhibition all lived in Melbourne, amazing artists like Karen Casey, I think it was Leah King-Smith, Lisa Kennedy, Ellen Jose. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. And then I thought I would try my hand at public artwork. So this is my first public art commission out in Box Hill. It's the site of the first drive-in in Melbourne. And they've turned it into a huge park. So I thought I would take over 40 metres of the footpath and have all these big giant serpents in the footpath, and had to get permission off Wurundjeri. This was on Wurundjeri lands to do that. And another sort of public art commission, Kimber Thompson from Black Dot Gallery, which is based in Brunswick, has been working a lot with artists over the years. And I think there were about 7 artists who were each commissioned to design a banner that is then sort of displayed during NODOC Week, Reconciliation Week, Sorry Day, all the different events. And then, I guess over the years, I've done quite a few artists' residencies. And this particular school had, I think, 2 Aboriginal kids in the school, and quite a big population of Asian children. And it was called My Place and Those Kids' Connection to Country. So this is a 15-metre Chinese golden dragon with 5 talons, which is like the supreme dragon. And it was absolutely brilliant. We had to have a false wall made to actually put that up. It was massive. And that previous one, that was all mosaic. And so the next large-scale mosaic, this was a reflective garden that was up in Mildura. My brother was instrumental in setting up the Aboriginal school called Kuri Open Door Education, and he passed away, and this is one of his drawings that I then turned into a mosaic, and it was a beautiful little garden area, a reflective garden. And then this is one of 2 trams that I've worked on. The first one was in 1988, advertising the Kuri Heritage Trust when it was based at the Melbourne Museum. And this one is through Multicultural Education Services, Adult Multicultural Education Services. And for those of you that have been to Melbourne, when you get on the tram and go from Spencer Street to Flinders Street, I think there's about 30 poles down near the aquarium. This is called Scar, a Stolen Vision. And each artist got 3 giant pier poles to carve. And so we learnt how to use chainsaws, angle grinders, arbortex, all the grunty power tools that I like now. But we interpreted, Scar any way we liked. So each artist did their interpretation of that. Another public art commission with Vicky Cousins. This is out at Point Cook in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and it's a big clump of frog eggs. So they're 3 mil thick spun stainless steel made in 6 parts, and it's clumped together to look like, the frog eggs when they're sort of floating in the water and there's a big clump underneath. So it tells a story of new life, new communities, new families, because Point Cook is quite a big, fast-growing community. And this is a big, giant bronze kangaroo apple. And it's about 3 metres long, about 1.5 metres high, and it's got a Murnon flower etched into it. And the story around that is when the kangaroo apple's out, and the Murnon flower is when the eels come back from their big journey. And there'd be a big corroboree down on the beach in Frankston, down on the Mornington Peninsula, and women would weave little daisy chains and put them in their hair, and pull possum pelts across their knees and drum, and the men would do corroboree, and then they'd have a big feast on the eels. This one's a big, I think it's 10 or 20 mil thick stainless steel. It's massive, it's so heavy. But this tells the story of Bunjil, our creator, flying over the land, and a feather falls from his breast and lands on the earth and creates all these beautiful habitats for the animals to come back. Where this feather is, it's one of the busiest intersections in Oakley, with 5 fairly main arterials, and there's barely anything there. there's a lot of grass and a couple of trees down the side, but council haven't followed through with creating all of those beautiful habitats for the animals. Must follow that one up. This is part of the research that I've done overseas in museum collections, and I tend to try and find any object and item from the southeast of Australia, particularly Victoria and New South Wales, and try and give these objects and items back to community through images. This is the storeroom at Pitt Rivers at Oxford University, in their store down the river. And then these are my big shields based on shields that I've seen, but also creating my own designs. So, let me see if I can work this. So the top right-hand one is based on women. I'll see if I can get this to work. This one here. So it's based on women and weaving. The middle one is based on my father's country and shield, and the one on the right is based on Yorta shield design. And then this one down the bottom, I'm one of 11 children, the middle child, the only one with no children. But I had 7 brothers, so you'll see here, there's the red bits, they're for my 3 brothers that have passed away. These are my sisters and I, and all these wiggly little lines represent all of my nieces and nephews. So, that's quite amazing. This is my nephew standing next to some kangaroo feet. One of the kangaroo tooth necklaces that I've seen at Pitt Rivers Museum at Oxford University. So there is no other necklace like this in any collection in Australia. And I will be making this again one day. Where's that thing? So this here is a kangaroo tooth engraving tool. Again, we didn't have an object like that anywhere in Australia. We've remade that, and there's now one at the Koori Heritage Trust in Victoria. Then you've got the awl, which is like the shin bone of a kangaroo, and that would be sharpened and used to pierce holes in skins or, through the nose. And then this other beautiful object here is the pelvis bone of a kangaroo. So you would use that like a knife or a scraper to scrape all the fat and stuff off furs when you were preparing them. And then this has got kangaroo teeth that are echidna quills, and this is echidna quills with human hair. So I've got quite a few of these pelvis bones, but also the pelvis bones joined together, which I've got to put an image in the PowerPoint, but they're absolutely beautiful. They're like these beautiful sort of scary masks, if you like. And then I was in an exhibition with Vicky Cousins and Lee Darrick at the Melbourne Museum a few years ago called Bunya. And I'd been like dreaming about making one of these kangaroo tooth necklaces for years. Now consider the kangaroo only has 2 bottom incisor teeth that I can use in this necklace, and there are 75 teeth in this necklace. That's an awful lot of kangaroos. And to make it, we've also used kangaroo leather, sinew from the kangaroo, from the tail of the kangaroo, and using ochre. So this is me and the kids and my sister at home collecting. And I've photographed every tooth that I've taken, every skeletal remain of the kangaroo that I've taken, different parts from. So I would have thousands of photographs. And hopefully one day I'll put together a book of the making of a kangaroo tooth necklace. And the kids know not to touch anything until after I've photographed it, and then they can, they're free to touch it. Again, these are the awls, the pelvis bone scraper, and these are little wooden pegs to peg out like the skins of a kangaroo or possum pelt. And this little one here is the jawbone of a possum, which is really, really sharp, that you can also carve into wood with, which is what they used to use. But also the kangaroo tooth engraving tools were also used. I call these my CSI investigation photos of the dead kangaroos. I just love them, I think they're just so sculptural. And then after being out on country collecting, then getting them home and then preparing them is another whole process in itself. And I just love that they're all different shapes. Even all the jaws are just different. And then cleaning them, preparing them. The guy here has actually got a peg on his nose. It is so smelly when you're doing this next phase of this process. But yeah, it's a lot of boiling up. The guys are sort of getting them out of the bones. And then over here it's like just preparing it all, preparing the leather. And then that's the sinew from the kangaroo, little bits of leather. And this whole process takes quite a long time. And then of course, me being the vegan I am, I can't chew the sinew. Once you chew it, it comes apart into like 5 or 6 other fibres. And I would say there's a real men's and women's business involved in the making of this, and through research I've found that it is a men's and women's business thing. So I would prepare the teeth after the guys had taken them out of the bone and clean them, prepare the leather. But the guys would chew the sinew for me and bind each tooth. And it looks like blood, but it's really beautiful ochre. So to date, I think I've made about 4 75 tooth necklaces, which are held in collections here in Australia. And I've made one 123 tooth necklace, which is held at the National Gallery of Victoria. It is massive. And this is Len Trelawney, who used to chew all of that sinew for me. And yes. And the necklace is now in at the Melbourne Museum, so this is the first 75 tooth necklace that we made. And I think this was for First Peoples exhibition, but Len passed away in January this year. And you'll see he's wearing a possum skin cloak, but when we get a little bit further down, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So apart from the 75 tooth necklace, the first necklace that we made together is here. So after the talk, you're quite welcome to come up and have a look. But it's quite spectacular. So you can see the teeth are quite large, and they're just, yeah, beautiful to work with. Then after making so many kangaroo tooth necklaces, I was in another exhibition and thought about making river reed necklaces. So again, I've got some river reed necklaces down here. You're quite welcome to come up and have a look at. But the whole process of collecting the reeds is finding a spot that has enough reeds for a start, and these ones I've dyed black, and another whole bundle I've dyed orange. Also using a lot of feathers in my work, in my big necklaces. And so again, I don't drive past roadkill. I've always got a kit in the back, which is plastic bags, tin snips, pliers, you name it, I've got it, and a big plastic container. And so those river reeds are based on the smaller river reed necklace, which was given to people passing through country, BoonWurrung country, and that was a sign of safe passage and friendship. So for the exhibition that I was in, called North, South, East and West, I supersized the necklaces to make 50, I think I made 3 50-metre river reed necklaces. And if any of you have been to Canberra to see Defying Empire at the National Gallery of Australia, I made 5 50-metre river reed necklaces for that exhibition. That was many months. So each reed, every 5th reed has a hole drilled into it, and then feathers stuck in either side. So it's many months of work. And I was just telling Marcus that I've just finished another 50-metre river reed necklace, black with crow feathers, for my mourning necklace, and being photographed in that. These are breastplates. So these were imposed on our mob back in the day, and given the names of, Queen Aggie or, King Billy or somebody, but to take that, take away the council of elders who would, look after the mob and appoint these other people in their place. So I've taken that and made my own breastplates with swales like the land, and created my own designs, and used feathers and, again, echidna quills, eagle feathers, and kangaroo teeth. I'm not sure why I put that there, but I think it's a great map. Showing a map of country. Here's our little Victorian map with our 38 language groups. And then back in, I think it was 2006, was that when the Commonwealth Games were here? 2006-ish, around about then. I worked with Lee Darrett, Vicky Cousins and Trina Han. We basically split the state in 4. We worked with all of those language groups to teach them the skill of possum skin cloak making. But in order to do that, you need to do your research behind that. So these are some of the historical images, and looking at William Barrett's drawing. This is when I first exhibited this, called Ritual and Ceremony. And you'll see the caps are sitting on a bed of red dirt. That represents the country where I'm from, where this practice is from, but also the sticks, which represent the huts that were built where the women would sit and wail. And I actually went back up home to country, to the Maree River, after a flood, went down to the river with my brother. I had to drag out all the big sticks that were stuck in the mud, lay them out at 3-metre lengths, and my brother with the chainsaw chopped them up for me and loaded them into the van. So we went straight from the Maree River, straight to Melbourne Museum, where they were then all frozen for like 3 weeks to kill any bugs once it was in there. this is another book that's also on the internet that has documented people wearing kopi. And this lady's called Wonko Mary. And he documented the clay falling off her head over time. And people dressed in European clothing, but these two are wearing kopi. Oh, I pressed the wrong button there. And then same people, but yeah, dressed differently. Interesting photo. And then from doing all that work and all those other exhibitions, and I guess hearing the stories of the 75 people that I eventually ended up working with, and getting their stories of loss, sorrow and mourning is pretty huge. So then myself and another friend, Robbie Latham, thought it might be a good idea to get some friends together and trial a kopi healing workshop. So we just invited our artist friends down to Footscray Arts Centre, painted them up, got them to make their own kopies. This one was actually at Melbourne University, where we worked with a whole bunch of art therapists. And that's Robbie Latham there painting her up. And then we photographed everybody, but again got everybody's story. And it's just one of the most powerful processes and projects. And I just did one earlier this year at the Powerhouse Museum. And then as part of the exhibition, after getting everybody's stories, I had it scrolling on the floor in front of the installation so that then it just sort of surrounded you. It was really, really powerful. And then took that same exhibition to New York. This is in Italy, in Sardinia, in London at the University of the Arts, in Cuba. That was pretty amazing. So again, they'd gone and collected all these sticks for me because I couldn't take my sticks from here because I already had like massive, massive luggage with my plinths and everything. And just to get our sticks over there was just crazy. So they collected that for me and the dirt. And then this is at the Melbourne Museum. So for this particular show, I got quite a few of my nieces and nephews to come to Melbourne and perform. This is when I took it back up home. These are all my nieces and nephews, the ones that live in Mildura. And this is the opening at the Melbourne Museum. So we had the older kids teach the younger kids in one afternoon the dances, so that there were 4 of them in a group, one of the older ones and the younger ones, and it was pretty powerful. It was brilliant. And then when the kids had finished, I had them walk over to the space and create like a guard of honour as people were walking through into this really sacred space. Oh, this is from an exhibition in Italy, in Euro, where I'd worked with 2 collectors in Melbourne, and we took 260 Aboriginal artworks to the Man Museum. Over 4 floors, we curated sort of 2 exhibitions. One lot was on for about 2.5 months, and the other lot was on for 2.5 months, but the second part of this exhibition I had to curate from here, and just remembering where all the rooms were and what was happening. And because we had a whole mix of artworks from all over in this one space, we had Billy Doolin, who's also a brilliant artist, for the smoking ceremony throughout every level of the building. I curated this exhibition with Amanda Reynolds. This is Pitt Rivers Museum at Oxford University. And I think I was a little bit gobsmacked when I went in there. It was like, it's just the most amazing space on the planet, I think, in terms of collections and what they have. And I think it's one of the biggest collections of message sticks I've ever seen outside of Australia. And even for them to have a dendroglyph tree, that sort of rocked my socks a little bit. I was a bit surprised there. But yeah, they have quite a bit of material. And that's an understatement. This is the Leiden Museum just outside of Amsterdam. And again, these museums just have the most amazing collections. And I think we need to sort of hook up community here with those collections over there to start giving those collections a voice, you know, because they're so dislocated, and how they're displayed over there is unbelievable. This was from my artist residency in Italy. And I think it was after this I decided I didn't want to paint anymore. I just want to sort of make sculptures and do photography and make holograms and things. This is at the Museum of Natural History in Florence. And again, they just have all of the Aboriginal objects in the one glass case that says Australia. But luckily I can identify Southeast Aboriginal objects and items, and I tend to photograph them, and I had access to all of these. But you know, my Italian's not that great and I can't read it, so it's really hard. You need somebody on the side that can be with you to sort of go through the translations with you. This is in Rome at the Vatican Museum. Again, this is in Berlin, and this little bit here, this is a possum pelt. They have 2 possum pelts by William Blandowski, and it doesn't have any fur on it, but it's got all those little pock marks around the edge that would have been used, where they would have used those little wooden pegs. And then they also had 2 William Barrick paintings that were just sitting on the floor. I was like, oh God. This is the British Museum, and here they have 1 possum pelt, and it hasn't got any marks to say it was connected to anything. Couldn't find any other documentation about it and why it was even there. And then this is a kangaroo tooth necklace using all of the teeth of the kangaroo, and they're quite big, it's massive. And then the others are shields and an emu feather skirt. And again, this is Saffron Walden, another little museum in the UK. But again, just with the images that they're using to represent us is like, you know, we stopped back then, we haven't evolved, we haven't moved, we're still a black fella standing on the rock or something. So my dream project is to set up something where I can take a group of elders and kids and young curators over there, hook them up with their own material cultural items and start giving them a voice and talk about the communities where they're from. Because I don't think we'll ever get any of these objects and items back, because we need our, you know, secret, sacred and our skeletal remains coming home first. H.G. Wedge's journal that I got to turn every page. We were looking for more kangaroo tooth objects and reference to possum skin cloaks, but there weren't any. Well, I don't know how come that happened. This is a new installation that you'll get to see sometime in September in an exhibition called 9 Hours Underground, underneath the Opera House. So that's coming up very soon. And the date will be somewhere between the 15th and 23rd of September. And it will look quite different down there, I dare say. I haven't been there yet, but yeah. So this is a multimedia piece, but I couldn't get that one to work either. This is another multimedia piece that will also be shown at 9 Hours Underground. And it's actually me coming out after being buried under 300 kilos of dirt. And my first take absolutely knocked the wind out of me. I thought I was going to die. And for the second take, I learned to hold my breath properly. I think the last 2 takes were perfect, because once they said I could come out, I held my breath for another 10 seconds and broke through the dirt. And that felt amazing. But I actually wanted to make this piece up on country, up on my father's country, and like be buried in the ground and come out. But, you know, time constraints, so we used a studio in Melbourne. And then this was turned into a hologram. So this is called Made from Memory, and of my grandmother's lounge room. So when I was growing up, we lived on 2 different missions and then moved to Mildura. And we did have a couch like this, we did have a chair like that, we did have a fireplace, and a Jesus picture, and a few other objects and items. But when I actually saw a photograph of my grandmother's house, it was so minimalist. She didn't have all of these other bits and pieces. She had a few feather flowers, not this many, but it's called Made from Memory. And it took me about 6 months to collect all of these bits and pieces. So now I live in like the house of excess. I've got, you know, nearly double of everything. But to shoot this hologram, the photographic hologram, I had to engage with a physicist who would come over from Adelaide to Melbourne, meet with me. We worked out the space. I thought my space could be twice as big, but I had to squeeze everything into quite a confined little space. And then we had to shoot it from one angle to the other. It took roughly around 1.5 minutes to shoot each frame. I was supposed to shoot 1,200 frames. That's a long time. So we cut it down to 600, because the company where I got this done in Lithuania could morph one image into the next. That was epic. And I still want to make a laser hologram. One day I'll get it done. But no, that was amazing to be able to do that. Again, in the chill out space, this is a whole bed of river reeds, and these are some Kulimans that I finished, I think, in December last year. So this was a commission for the Frankston Hospital. So I made these Kulimans out of plaster based on, I do plaster casting of a huge big Kuliman that Len made, and these designs are connected to BoonWurrung, with the blue being the water, based on river reeds, connection to country, and this one's sort of more the river reeds and men's shields. And then as part of that commission, I made these 3 baby possum skin cloaks and framed them myself. I like to do as much as I can myself. And so this one is a map of BoonWurrung country. This one is Wah, and down here you've got Bunjil the eagle. And then I made these 10-metre river reed necklaces and framed them all up. Actually, I ended up painting the backboards in these because I didn't like the colour the frame was used, so I went and painted that again and reframed everything. But they look fantastic. And the idea was behind this was that when women were having babies in the hospital, that they would wrap them in one of these possum skin cloaks and place them in the Kulin and photograph them, you know, rather than, you know, in a little pink and blue bunny rug. But they just love them so much that they're just now bolted to the wall. And the Kulimans are in the maternity section, again, bolted to the wall. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll have to make an ugly set or something so that they can be in, I don't know. This is Len and I on the last project that we worked on, which was making a possum skin cloak for reconciliation. Out at Wyndham, which is where I work 3 days a week as a curator at the art gallery, and the rest of my life is just making art. And so I got this great project, and Len was generous enough to, and I had this cloak made for him for his 60th birthday. So we ended up photographing every single person that came through the project, all wrapped in Len's possum skin cloak. And then when Len passed away this year, we got the cloak, and you know, he loved his gun-eye diamond designs, and then we had all of his family and our family and his children and grandchildren come around home. We also had his totems. I think that's Boran the pelican, Tuck the musk duck, and the blue wren. And because the whole story behind the possum skin cloak is that you got your 3 little pelts or 4 little pelts when you were born, and as you grew, your possum skin cloak grew with you. So it became almost like your autobiography. It told you your connection to, or others, your connection to country, culture, place, family, kin, everything was on your cloak. And when you died, you were wrapped in your cloak. So that's what we did with Len this year. So, and it was just, you know, 2 weeks before I'd done this amazing Kobe healing workshop at the Powerhouse Museum with Marcus, and did this amazing Kobe healing workshop. But yeah, I went and wrapped Len in his cloak, as should be. And that's it, guys. That's a family heading off, and there's Bunjil, our creator. Any questions? I love questions. I know it's an awful lot to take in. I know
I don't have any questions.
but I love it. I love absolutely every single thing that I do with a passion. And at the moment, when I get home tomorrow, I've got another whole bundle of river reeds sitting in my backyard. I'm making a river reed canoe, which will talk about my connection to Tasmania. So Manalagenna was my grandfather 5 times back. I'm in an exhibition at Mission to Seafarers in Melbourne, so I need to make this canoe and talk about my connection to Tasmania. I've never made a river reed canoe before, but I know I can make it. I'm halfway there. It's great.
It's not so much a question, but I'm so impressed by the size and scale of the projects that you've done all through your career. Just taking on a public art commission is so massive. Like what, I don't know, as an artist, I'm interested in how you just said you learn to do it yourself. Like,
I think I thrive on, I love working under pressure. I love being under the pump. I think that's when I do my best work. I'll leave things like this exhibition where I have to make this river reed canoe. That opens on the 11th of September. I only collected the river reeds last Sunday. You know what the weather's been like in Melbourne? It is unbelievable. And it's so cold, sometimes I can't even go out the back and work, or it's raining. But I figure I'll just make it work. If it comes to the crunch, I'll put a big tarp down in my lounge room, I'll drag all those river reeds in, because, you know, I've got tiles throughout the house, it just doesn't matter. Because for me, everything's about art. And you just make it work, you know. All my kitchen appliances, had to go and buy a new set of pots because I'm boiling up kangaroo teeth and kidney quills. You know, wattle resin, which we mix with the ochre to paint onto the cloaks. Like, there's a whole process. Yeah, I love it.
So impressive.
Thank you.
Maree, we've noticed, I've seen some of your wonderful kangaroo teeth necklaces in a couple of places. I hadn't realised until you said that they're an uneven number. Kangaroos have 2 teeth. Why are your necklaces 75 and 123?
Because the 75, I think, is, well, initially, this 27 tooth necklace is the first one. I don't know, is the first one that I'd seen, so I wanted to make that, and I've kept that one, and I won't sell that necklace for quids. But the other ones were, that was the next size up that I'd seen in the museum. And yeah, pardon me. And then for the kangaroo only to have those 2 bottom incisor teeth, and it's not every kangaroo that I stop at has 2 good teeth, because I might break one as I'm trying to pull it out. Yeah, that's all.
There's no particular reason.
No. But I just realised now when you said that. I think I like uneven numbers too. You know, 3, 6, 9, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I was also interested in the scale of what this just was being about. And thinking about what thinking goes into the judgments that you're making when you're thinking about the river reed necklaces, the size, so was it 50 metres, 10 metres, and also the sizing of the kangaroo necklaces. Is that, what's the judgments that are being made?
I think if I was to make, you know, other reed necklaces like this size, how many people are going to really notice that? It needs to be the wow factor. And I think when you've got, you know, 5 50-metre river reed necklaces sitting there talking to you, you're going to take notice. And you're going to see how much work that takes. These also take a lot of time and effort, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, you know, before the 15th of September, I'll get to make another 50-metre river reed necklace for the 9 hours underground, because the curator there would like one, and of course I said yes. So it's a matter of, you know, in between building this canoe and making that, and, you know, working 3 days a week as a curator. Yeah, but it's all fun. I love it. You know, it's just, yeah, working under the pump. it's great. Yeah.
I'm from Robinvale, which is down on the Maree near to Mildura, and when I was a kid, there were a lot of Aboriginal people living pretty much traditional traditional way of life on the river, hunting, fishing, and so on. And it seemed to me that they were kind of living under the wire, away from the Aboriginal board, you know. Is that something that happened along the river, that the Aboriginal people were able to escape being put on reserves and control?
Well, I know and I can only speak for my own family, my grandparents were drovers. So they, you know, there's little towns up near Balranald called Goodnight, Kylie, Moolameen, all up around there. So my grandparents used to drove all around the place and didn't live in town. My grandfather taught my mother how to read out bush by reading the newspaper. We lived on 2 missions after I was born. Probably 3. We probably spent a little bit of time at Wamba, which is in New South Wales, just near Swan Hill. But we went from there to, that must have been the mission in Balranald, which I should show that. Can I show that tent one? The tent one. Sorry, I forgot to, because I was just talking about that. I forgot. These lenticular prints, which will talk about my family living on the mission down by the riverbank. We lived in a tent. My bed was a suitcase. I was younger than 2. But we lived there. My grandparents had a little camp further up. But this is a lenticular print based on that story that we were told. So a lenticular print is a 3D photograph, so it's layers and layers of photos. And I get these, this was a commission for Monash University, so it's at the new Matheson Library out in Clayton. So that's the sensation you get when you walk past it. Yeah, it's quite amazing.
Sorry, because we started so late, we might have to leave it there, but I'm so impressed with the way that you're leaping into these 21st technologies with some of the practices that you're doing. It's just fantastic and amazing to see.
Well, my next thing, and I've already sort of been talking to Acme X, who deal with and make virtual reality things. So I've had a chat to them, and augmented reality. So that's sort of the next phase, and a laser hologram. So those 3 things I need to achieve, you know, before I go anywhere.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this incredible career that you've had. Can we just give one more thank you to